Hi, Kim.
Hello, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks for doing this. It's great to see you.
Hoping the voice holds up, okay?
Yeah, I love it. I'm just glad that we can hear your stories, my friend. I can totally understand you. But if you ever feel like you need a break or anything, you just let me know, right? I don't want to make this
Well,
difficult.
it'll be no problem. I'm used to people walking out on my interviews.
And is it okay with you if during this chat I might play some audio for us to listen to together, just a little bit here and there? Is that okay?
Do whatever you want, have fun, go with it.
Okay, great. And you have set aside, 6 or 7 hours for this, right?
The whole day.
Well, thanks so much. Perhaps off the top, because listeners are gonna hear your voice and wonder where is that British accent we heard for so many years. Are you okay? Maybe discussing the health challenges that you've been facing lately.
Absolutely. In fact, I consider that to be one of my main tasks these days of trying to inform people that there are about 60,000 other people that have speech disabilities. So, whatever I can do and to highlight the situation, I will do that.
So, what exactly are you dealing with here that has altered your voice in this manner?
Well, I got throat cancer for the second time. And Christmas 2019. And this time, they could not do radiation or chemo as I had already been radiated. So they cut out my throat and my thyroid and lymph nodes and then rebuilt the feeding tube in my throat and inserted a prosthesis on the new throat. This button there, this is what allows me to breathe. The air goes in there, but this stops the air from coming out. And when I push it, it pushes the air into that prosthesis and it comes out through my mouth.
Science is wonderful, isn't it? Like, I think it's just amazing that here we are, and I can have a deep dive conversation with the great Kim Clarke Champniss, and that you're able to communicate. Amazing.
When it works, it is amazing. The downside is that it's unreliable because, without getting into too much detail, but all kinds of gunk comes up from your lungs and fills the prosthesis, and I have to go and clean it, like a chimney sweep, getting in there.
Understood. So there was a possibility that it would not be functioning right now, and that we would have to delay this conversation until you could actually speak again.
That's correct, sir. Although I'm now into my third year, it took me a year of having no voice, and I've had this for almost 2 years. And it's only now where it's becoming slightly more dependable.
Well, I'm gonna ask kind of. I hope this doesn't sound callous, but other than this speaking issue, how do you feel?
I feel great. You know, you go through so many changes in your life, and I have had a life of so many extremes, and this is just another one. And what is important, particularly given the fact the whole world is going through COVID, it's really important to keep on keeping on. We gotta just stick with it and not be overwhelmed by all the problems. Although it is a challenge, no matter what is going on in your world.
I'm so glad you're going to keep on keeping on, my friend. And I'm going to jog your memory a little bit here. And I know you don't remember meeting me because I'm just some guy, but I definitely remember meeting you. This was an event that my friend Ed Conroy, aka Retro Ontario, he was hosting an event for the launch of Christopher Ward's book about much music. And it was almost, I will say, it was surreal to be there as a civilian, if you will, because I was witnessing a Much Music reunion, and I'm like, oh look, there's Ziggy, and there's Simon Evans, and look, oh, there's Clarke Champniss, and I did briefly meet you there, so we have been in the same room at one point.
That was a marvelous night. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We went to a movie theater afterwards, did we not?
I think it was held at, is it the Royal? I want to say it was held at a movie theater.
Yeah, and then I DJ'd afterwards, if I remember rightly.
Right, and that's when I felt like maybe I should make my exit because I wasn't one of the cool kids. But absolutely, I do believe that's true. And so that was a great night, and I got to meet many people that eventually would appear on the show. And I'm honored that finally I've got you on the program, and I'm going to bring you way back, but because I mentioned Ed's name, I just want to ask his question because last week I had Ed Conroy on the program for Christmas Crackers Volume 4. And when he learned you were coming on the next week, he said, you have to ask him about Are You Receiving? He says, it doesn't get enough love. So maybe now we address Ed's Are You Receiving question, and then I'll bring us to kind of a chronological review here.
Receiving was the electronic show on Much Music. And, I've been a big fan of the electronic music coming through the new wave and everything. And then, of course, electronic music morphed into techno and modern dance music, for want of a better phrase. And, it was the time of the Prodigy and the Chemical Brothers. And I wanted Much Music to dedicate a electronic show. And so I dubbed it Are You Receiving? And the title came from a Killing Joke song. When I was a new wave DJ, we used to play Are You Receiving at the Love Affair nightclub in Vancouver, and it would drive the dancers wild. So I always wanted to use that title. And so we launched Are You Receiving?
Love it. So Ed wants you to know that it was underappreciated. He and many others big fans of Are You Receiving?
It was a great showcase for electronic music at just the right time. And, here in Canada, we had Richie Horton, who was one of the pioneers of electronic music. And, today we got people like Dead Mouse, doing their thing.
Absolutely. Now I'm going to take you way back. So unlike some other DJs and talents I know who kind of put on a bit of a British accent to kind of create a persona, you come by your accent honestly. You're from London, England, my friend.
I was raised in London, England, and just after my 19th birthday, the Hudson's Bay Company hired me in London and flew me to Eskimo Point, Northwest Territories, to be a trainee manager in their Northern Stores department.
Wow. Okay, before we get to Canada here, though, I'm going to just play a trailer for a 1960 film. We have to address this, my friend. Here's it's a couple of minutes, but I think it's worthwhile. Here we go.
Science fiction has never imagined so strange or terrifying a story as that of the village of Midwich, England, cut off from life as we know it by some mysterious force. And later, at one and the same time, a child was born to every woman in the village. Children that grew to look like this. Beautiful youngsters behind whose fiery, hypnotic eyes lurked the demon forces of another world.
They're not human. They ought to be destroyed.
Forces put to such sinister use that it became a national emergency.
We are gathered here as advisors, as scientists, as government experts.
Have we established anything about the origins of these children?
There is the possibility of the transmission of energy.
Let me get this straight. You imply that these children may be the result of impulses directed towards us from somewhere in the universe.
What we need is time to investigate.
Are you aware of life on another planet? Why are you so nervous when an aircraft flies above you?
Until recently, we haven't been able to make our control reach as far as a high aircraft.
Oh, now you have, is that it?
Today, their control reaches out into space. Tomorrow, will it girdle the globe?
There's nothing you can do to stop us. Leave us alone.
Kim, I had to include all 2 minutes because it's glorious. Please tell the listenership, the FOTMs, why did I just play the trailer for Village of the Damned?
You know what? I'm going to go to my grave with the motif that I was a child of the damned. Yes, in 1959, 1960, I was recruited to be one of the children, but at a very baby level. I was only 4, I guess, maybe 5, and I played 2 parts that made it to the movie Final Cut. My mother told me I actually played 3 parts, 2 boys and a girl. And now it's not a speaking part, but it's a pivotal moment in the movie. George Sanders, who has his son David, wants to show when one of these alien children learns something, they all learn it. And so there's a little Chinese box, and he gives it to his child, and the child opens it and gets the chocolate. And then he runs down to the village of Midwich, and 2 alien children are in a house, and I'm those alien children, the girl and the boy, and it's the first time in the movie that our eyes are illuminated. And of course, that became the key element to the movie, and it's become an iconic image to this very day in pop culture.
And it's been all downhill from there.
Well, actually, you know, there's some kind of truth in the idea of being a child of the damned. You know, I've always been kind of damned in my life. You know, the punk rock attitude I've always had, anti-authority. You know, think for yourself, question authority, and storm the barricades of mediocrity.
So how does somebody with the punk rock attitude end up moving to Canada to take that job with the Hudson Bay Company? Like, how does that come to be? Like, why did you emigrate to this country?
Well, again, you know, just using that idea of being a rebel, I did not want to go into the city of London and follow in my father's footsteps. I wanted adventure, and to this very day, I've always believed, you know, why sacrifice your life for a comfortable pension when, you know, you're wasting all those great years of youthful energy. So I kind of risked everything, and to this day, I kind of risk everything because, you know, life is for living. Go out and live it.
I'm going to play a little bit of another song here. Any opportunity to add some nice audio elements, and there's so many opportunities with you. So here, let's listen to about a minute of this, then I'll fade it down, and then I'll ask you why I'm playing this jam.
It hits hard, no doubt. when the truth lies there like that. So unashamed, unstained, I never lied or told the truth. Don't mistake my lust for love. Don't mistake my lust
for love. Still love this song, Kim. Okay, so we got to get this story right here. We've got you at working for the Hudson Bay Company, and you mentioned is that Northwest Territories?
Yeah, the Northwest Territories. So I'll give you the timeline. So I lived a year up there. Then I went down to Winnipeg, picked up my paycheck, bumped around Canada for another year, ended up in Vancouver, mid-70s, enrolling at UBC, University of British Columbia, and put myself through university as a disco DJ.
Wow.
When I graduated. Thought, okay, maybe I should get a straight job. But the rebel in me said no. I ended up being a DJ at a very famous new wave nightclub called Love Affair. And the guys in Images in Vogue, who you just heard, they were just starting off. And they hadn't played a gig yet, and they invited me to the first gig. And I went to see them, and then they wanted to play the Love Affair. And I got them the gig of the Love Affair. And in the process of doing that, they said, why don't you manage us? So I ended up managing Images in Vogue.
And you're still a very young man. I'm just doing the math in my head, but this is quite the opportunity. So here you are. Now you're DJing at Love Affair, and you're a manager for Images in Vogue. Like this, I guess, this sort of puts your path in life in the musical realm. You're now a professional, music manager, if you will.
But no, well, exactly. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I crossed over. And because Images was so ahead of the learning curve, very, very progressive for 1981, everyone was like, well, who is this band? Who is this manager? Where has this come from? And it changed my life, and it changed their life as well.
Now, most people listening to us now, they might not remember you as the DJ at Club Love Affair, and they might not have even seen any 1960s horror movies, but the vast majority of people will remember you first from Much Music. So now I need this story, because here you are managing Images in Vogue, and then when we first see you, you might be hosting Rock Flash or maybe on City Limits or something. How do you end up in the Moses environment? How do you end up working at City Chum there?
Well, the Images success was pretty great. We went from nothing to one of the pioneer electronic bands of Canada. And they, brought attention to me as well as the band. And quite honestly, we would have continued together as a partnership, but we didn't crack the big market. We couldn't get into the United States. And so, and I'm good friends with the guys even now. I said the best thing I can do is walk away from this, give you everything, and let me try and find a way to pay my rent. And man, I couldn't even pay my friggin' rent. And so for a year or so, I worked for Sam Feldman in the music booking agency, Bruce Allen's partner, which taught me that side of the industry. And I worked with Denise Donlan at Sam Feldman's. And in 1985, John Martin, the head honcho of Much Music, hired Champniss to do Rock Flash. And then the following year, she moves on to the new music when Daniel Richler leaves. and she recommends that John Martin to do Rock Flash. So I did an audition interview with Terry David Mulligan. I interviewed Molly. I sent the tape to John Martin, and the next minute I got a ticket to Toronto.
Okay. Now, what year? Do you remember what year it is that you come to Toronto?
September 1986.
Okay. So you're actually, like, you mentioned names like Terry David Mulligan and Bruce Allen, and you're in Vancouver. And what I think about is the coming together of Tears Are Not Enough. Were you at all in that circle of, we're at all around that scene when Tears Are Not Enough is kind of coming together?
No, because Tears Are Not Enough was very mainstream. Of course, Korea, Platinum Blonde, and then Images in Vogue, like the Spoons, and the other electronic bands were still very fringe. We're essentially CFNY.
Right. Do you remember, because we do a lot of deep dives into the spirit of radio, CFNY, with David Marsden, and I won't drop all the names, but Ivor Hamilton and Scott Turner, and eventually May Potts, and eventually Alan Cross and people like that. But I'm curious, can you remember any of the champions of your music at CFNY back at that time? And then we'll get to the Much. We have a lot to talk about at Much. But do you remember any of the CFNY champions of Images in Vogue?
Well, first of all, CFNY was crucial to the development of Images in Vogue. When we did our first big EP, the Educated Man EP, I'm sending records to various record stores in Toronto. And then one day, we got a call, or I got a call from the music programmer for CFNY, whose name I can't remember. I think Earl Veal.
Earl Veal, yes.
I think it was Earl Veal that called me and said, look, we're adding the record. And we were like, really? And then the next minute, Record Peddler at the record store is calling me up and says, can we have 30 copies? And I was like, 30 copies? Wow, we had the big time. And CFNY ended up promoting Images in Vogue. And in 1985, shortly after I quit managing, the band came to Toronto and were named Group of the Year. And the song In the House was named Single of the Year. So collectively, CFNY supported us.
Do you remember if that was a or a Casby? Do you remember?
No.
So shout out again to FOTM Mars Bar. Absolutely. Now, I love all that. So any detail like that, share it. But now that we have yet much, I have another clip I want to play because I want people to hear how Kim Clarke Champniss might have sounded on, let me make sure I have the right click, on Rock Flash. So let's listen for about a few minutes here.
Can you ever tell that guy it's a way to treat a fine musical instrument? It's a little edgy.
Well, I'll tell you, it's apropos because we got ourselves a sort of rockabilly news here, believe it or not. Yeah, believe it or not. How does Cheap Trick and Fleetwood Mac fit into rockabilly?
Oh, boy, this is so professional, kids. You guys in college, this is a professional segue. Here's Kim Clarke Champniss at the Rock Flash desk.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, really, how does Cheap Trick and Fleetwood Mac fit into rockabilly? Well, you'll find out in a minute. First up, Cheap Trick. They, of course, have recently had a big hit with a remake of Elvis Presley's Don't Be Cruel. Well, the band is coming to Western Canada in the month of February. They're going to be on the road with Eddie Money. Here are 3 dates that have been announced by local promoters, Periscope. First up, in Calgary, February the 19th, Cheap Trick with Eddie Money will be at the Saddle Dome. Edmonton, February the 20th at Northlands Coliseum. And Cheap Trick, along with Eddie Money, will be in Vancouver, February the 24th, PNE. Right, from Cheap Trick into Fleetwood Mac. But before we get to Fleetwood Mac, if you're a hardcore fan, maybe you can recognize this particular tune. Well, if you are a hardcore fan, you may know that cult classic, which is 10 years old now. It comes from the Rosillos album, and the song is Somebody's Gonna Get Their Head Kicked In Tonight. Nice romantic number there. Well, what's really quirky about it is that, in fact, that is a cover tune. And the band that originally did that song was, believe it or not, Fleetwood Mac. Take a look at this. This is their 1969 single, Man of the World, which went to #1 in the United Kingdom that year. On the flip side of Man of the World is this particular song. Somebody's going to get their head kicked in tonight, and they did it under a pseudonym, Earl Vince. Can you see that? Earl Vince and the Valiants, and that was the alter ego of Fleetwood Mac. The whole idea behind it was the songwriter Jeremy Spencer, who played alongside Peter Green at the time. This is what Jeremy Spencer looked like in 1969. Well, the man really did have a sense of humor, and also he was a great person who could parody numbers. I got a chance to speak to Mick Fleetwood recently about that particular song.
You know, I could listen to that entire thing, Kim. I love that. Like, I just love what you deliver there. It's just mind blow and fun fact and music news. That was awesome.
Thank you. Listening to that, I am reminded how important not just much music, but rock flash, bringing you rock and roll news for Canada. Well, you know, where else would you know that Cheap Trick and Eddie Money were playing the saddle dope? And my role, as I understood it, was to be that informer, that individual that helped push rock and roll in Canada, because there was no national outlet for news on the airwaves. And it was a crucial role, and I took it very seriously.
And we loved you for it. For guys like me, and I grew up watching much music because, like you said, that was my national thread. Like, that's how I got introduced to a great deal of music. That and 102.1 are basically my two main sources of music at the time. And I really appreciated that, what we heard there, which is almost, if I made quick tangent, I try to capture the spirit of that on my podcast. Like, we will have episodes with kind of just mind blow after mind blow like that. Like, I don't know where else. Maybe you'd read it in Rolling Stone or some magazine or something. But, you know, that the fact that you're kind of presenting this education to a national audience, this is pre-internet times. That was invaluable.
Really only recently come to realize that what my role was then and is now, educate, entertain, and inform.
Now, on a personal note, I'm curious though, when you listen back, do you have a moment ever where you miss your voice? Is that do you miss sounding like that?
Well, I miss being 21, but I can't regret it.
That's true. No, like you said, keep on keeping on. Now, I have a question though about your role on City Limits. Can you share with us? Okay, so Rock Flash. I guess does Rock Flash eventually get replaced by Rapid Facts?
Yes, it became Facts, then Rapid Facts. So what happened? I'm just thinking of the timeline. Well, first of all, Christopher Ward, who was hosting City Limits, he was concentrating on the music career with Annalena Miles, and asked me if I would take over City Limits around about 1987. And I just brought all my alternative enthusiasm to the show. And of course, it was just at that time where the alternative scene was becoming one of the most important scenes in the whole of the world, and ultimately leading, to Pearl Jam and Nirvana and the like. And so I was overjoyed, and along with Simon Evans, who produced the show, he and I were able to play whatever we wanted, so Joy Division, The Cramps, the Wonder Stuff. Do you remember the Wonder Stuff? So we were able to do that. And once again, here I am in a role where, on a national level, I am exposing alternative music. And there was only one other national outlet, and that was Brave New Waves. So between City Limits and Brave New Wave, we were able to promote this music and play what we wanted. I love City Limits and I'm very proud of it to this very day.
Now I'm going to play a little promo. This is this is when Christopher Ward was hosting, but just to give us a taste of that time, here's a quick 30-second promo.
Friday and Saturday nights for people who like to stay up late. City brings you all-night video. City Limits. When everyone else is signing off, we're just warming up. From 1:30 a.m., City Limits. Finally, Toronto gets all-night video. City Limits premieres tonight.
And correct me, I believe I have my story right here, but you'll correct me. That's why you're here. But City Limits, this is a John Martin production that's essentially, this lays the bed for Much Music, right? This was sort of like your, almost like a Much Music test bed of sorts. Do I have my my facts right there?
Yeah, sort of, although John had already launched the New Music.
Right.
So between the New Music and City Limits, those two shows were laying the foundation for what would be Much Music.
Right. And the New Music, I shouldn't be confusing these, but it's been a long time. But the New Music, that's the show that had Papa's got a brand new that's got the pig bag jam as the theme, right?
That's correct.
All right. It's all sorted out. But you also co-hosted, just to confuse things a little bit, you also co-hosted the New Music.
Again, when Denise moved on, and Channeling Wide and myself ended up hosting the thing. Officially, my title was a special assignment reporter, I believe.
Right. So I want to ask you about a few things. And these, I should point out, I did pop on your wiki page. My role here is to flesh out the facts. So you might see there's a line on your Wikipedia page. And, anyone can update Wikipedia, but I'll just read the line verbatim. It says, it talks about you working at the New Music, and it says, in this role, Marianne Faithfull, John Lydon, and the Bee Gees all walked out of interviews with Champniss because they objected to his interview questions. I must ask you, now that I have this opportunity, is that true, and what did they object to exactly?
Well, let's take them one at a time because you're not the first person to bring that up. Okay, so Marianne Faithfull, she was doing a publicity tour for her apparently autobiography. And I had been pre-warned going into the interview that she had had a tough time with the interviewer before me, a very famous guy, we won't mention him. She was very tired. And the promo person asked me to go gently on her. And of course, I'm a big fan. And then I started asking her questions. And here's where it becomes strangely ironic. There are many references in the book to the village of the damned and the children of the damned. And she looks at me quizzically. And then I realized that she didn't write her book. She had a ghostwriter, and then I pointed out, I said, well, look, guess what? I was one of the children of the damned. And at that point, she's like, oh my God, I gotta go. So she left. It wasn't so much she objected to my questions. All right, next up, well, Johnny Rotten and the Sex Pistols. So that's the Filthy Lucre Tour, 1996. Denver, and John was strategizing how best to get the most out of the interview, and he wanted to duplicate all his other famous get up and, guy out time. So the opening question got his back up when I suggested that maybe the music. They created the archetype, Johnny Rotten, Sid Vicious, and the sense of theater about the Sex Pistols. And they just used that as the moment to rip off the microphone and begin to insult me. But at the same time, it revealed an awful lot about it. The other Sex Pistols remained for the interview. And now the Bee Gees. It wasn't all the Bee Gees. It was Robin Gibb, who was 2 hours late for the interview. And myself and his brothers have been waiting and waiting. And again, my opening question set him off, and he walked out. And the brothers were like, "Yeah, so what?" Yeah.
I'm so glad that we clarified this, because this is one of those like clickbait type headlines. You know, what did Kim say to offend these people? And of course, as you tell these stories, it's none of this is on you, my friend.
Well, you know, my job, even though criticism is the handmaiden to the arts, you've got to do some probing. You cannot continually just play the media game and, hey, have a nice day.
Right. All right. I got to ask you about John Martin before we leave your time here at Much and the new music. And John Martin, who I never had the pleasure, or depends on your perspective, I suppose, of meeting. But I will just say that Ziggy came over and she unloaded on John Martin and had very difficult time working for him and with him. And I was hoping we could hear, how was your business relationship like with John Martin?
Well, first of all, I'm disappointed that Ziggy had a hard time with John. John changed all of our lives. J.D. Roberts, Jeannie Becker, Tilly Stonland, Steve Anthony, myself. You know, he created the channel along with Moses. But, you know, John was a rebel and very much old school. And I think the world of John Martin, but at the same time, he was very difficult. And, you know, if you wanted to have a meeting with John, you had to go to the pub, you know, to discuss whatever it was you wanted to talk about. And, yeah, it was very rough around the edges, but I loved him dearly.
I understand that, yeah, like he had a phone. Like, this is back, of course, I believe this is when you could smoke in bars in this city, but he had, I guess, phone calls would terminate or resolve at the bar across the street.
Well, there's a very famous story in 1985, before I joined Much Music, when Much Music was going to be carrying Live Aid, and John Martin was at the Emilio's bar, which was next to the old studios at 99 Queenies, and the phone rang, and the bartender picked it up and said, "Hey, John Martin, Bob Geldof for you." Sorry.
No, I love it. I love it. Now, I'm gonna, well, before, maybe we'll just finish you off at the Moses Empire by asking you about what it was like working for a visionary like Moses Namer.
Well, I'm trying to think of something very...
Because unlike John Martin, Moses might listen to this.
First of all, Moses is a real good visionary. There's no doubt about that. Second of all, he is not the most huggable individual you'll ever meet in your life. Third of all, intellectually, he will play mind games with you, and he loves it when you attempt to play mind games back. Yeah, Moses really, although he would often give us all such a hard time, you cannot take away from him the visionary aspect of what he wanted. And I was just talking the other day to someone that used to work for Much Music about that moment in sometime in the 90s, I can't remember, but he called us all in a meeting, and he was talking about the launch of internet technology and how this was going to be the future. And we were all like, yeah, okay, those computer nerds, whatever. And here we are all these years later, and it is the future.
Well, that's why we call him a visionary, right? And Kim, I'll point out though, I know I know you paused there before answering, and thank you for your answer. But I did produce for a period of time. I produced a podcast for it's called Gallagher and Gross Save the World. It was with John Gallagher and Peter Gross, and I just loved producing this because the Moses stories that I was inundated with on a weekly basis were something else. So yeah, so I've heard some stories.
Yeah, Moses and I think it would be fair to say that he and I were always at loggerheads. But I got to tell you a story. When I was working for the New Music, I got sent the Diamond Rio MP3 player, which was the forerunner to the iPod. It was one of the very first in all of Canada. I had absolutely no idea what it did. And I went up to the internet technology department, and I said, look, guys, I got this. What does it do? And they freaked out, being the nerds that they were, they knew. And then they showed me. And in the space of, 2 minutes, I had 3 or 4 Beatles songs on this mobile player. And I was like, oh my God, this is a revolution in my hand. I knew it. A huge light bulb went off. And I was like, who can I share this with? And I went to Moses, knowing that Moses would appreciate what I just discovered. And sure enough, yeah.
Wow. I remember those days in the mid to late 90s when we were just sort of getting our feet wet. And you described the Diamond Rio. I remember the Diamond Rio. And my memory might be a little off here, but I remember something like, oh, you can fit 256 megabytes of music on this, and your brain would explode because you're used to the CD capacity, whatever that was, 74 minutes or whatever it was. And this whole idea, like, I can get a lot of MP3s in 256 megabytes. Meanwhile, I think this laptop I'm recording this on now has a couple of terabytes of space on it, But what a time to be around this revolution here. Wow.
I gotta say, I've been really lucky. I've been blessed to have participated in 4 to 5 decades of music and pop culture. In the 60s, I was a fan. In the 70s, I was a disco DJ. In the 80s, I was a new wave DJ, a manager, an agent, and then a VJ. In the 90s, I ended up releasing my own poetry, spoken word stuff. And then in the 2000s, I published 2 books, so I've been really lucky.
Well, here, you talked about great music. Let me play something that will tie into something you just said here. Let's listen.
The sect addressed her as mother, but Anne was her name. The New World was her Eden, but from England she came. She taught that she was Christ incarnate in the body of a woman, man's true fate. Celibacy and austerity, life would be enhanced by the Maker. All would be revealed in the dance of the Shaker. Sex, death machines rule our lives.
The Shaker.
In concentric moving circles.
Kim, that's The Shaker. Who has the credit on this jam?
Okay, so the music is Joe Visvari from Images of Vogue. The lyric is me. Daryl Flint, I think, is on there as well, who played with National Velvet. And I think Dave Rout, who played with Rational Youth and Digital Poodle. I think he's on there as well. And it was recorded at a Daryl Flint studio in Toronto, and then re-recorded and mixed at the Skinny Puppy studio in Vancouver.
Wow. Okay, so this is credited to KCC and Dance Speak.
Yeah.
You've done it all. I hope you take a moment to soak it in. That you kind of, just before I played this jam, you kind of surmised it nicely. But for decades, you've been this musicologist. You've been all around, and I haven't even got to. There's something I'm about to drop on the FOTMs listing. That's Friends of Toronto Mic'd, by the way. And Kim, you're now an FOTM, and I'm honored that you're now an FOTM. But I'm about to play a jam that we play quite a bit on Toronto Mic'd, and we play it because I consider it a guilty pleasure, and maybe I should remove the word guilty from that. But let me bring down this fantastic KCC and Dance Speak and play a song listeners know. And we got to get into this. This is kind of a mind blow here. I'm just warning everybody. But here we go.
In the maze of promises, don't know what's real or not. Promise you everything, they'll never lie. Don't you even know what it is you want, so how can I even try? It's all a mistake. How long will it take when the dreams are all gone? How long till you wait? It's all a mistake.
This, of course, is Serial Joe's Mistake. Okay, Kim, the microphone is yours. I will be quiet because I need to hear, like, how do you come to leave Chum City and the work you were doing with Moses, etc., and end up working with the good people with Serial Joe? Please tell me this story.
Well, first of all, that sounds really great. I haven't heard that in years, and my goodness, that sounds good. Much music was behind Serial Joe when they were an indie band. We played Skid Row, and I think they won Indie Video of the Year. And Ryan Dennis, the lead singer, who was 16 at the time, his mother, Debbie, was managing the band that had taken them to that level. Incredible success for a suburban mum who knew nothing about the industry. And then one day she came to me and she had a demo of that song, Mistake. And I went, oh my goodness, you got a hit there. And I said, you need serious management to take it to the next level. So I gave her a list of about 10 major managers in Canada. And about 6 weeks later, she came back to me and she said, no one wants to manage with me. And I was so like, what? I couldn't believe it. And then she said, well, will you co-manage? So I stepped into the co-management role. And we got Dave Ogilvy of Images of Vogue and Skinny Puppy fame to produce the record. And we laid it down. And we ended up sequencing at Brian Adams' warehouse studio in Vancouver which was amazing. And we ended up getting a deal with Aquarius Records out of Montreal, and with the famous Donald K. Donald. And then Donald managed to get us on, or get the band on the emerging artist stage at Woodstock 99. And then we ended up getting a deal with Columbia Records out of New York. Serious money. I mean, the more money than I'd ever experienced. It's a signing bonus. But of course, when you split it up, you're not left with a lot. But just at that moment, Napster and MP3 had hit, and the music industry went into decline. And now, even though Columbia, New York, had given us a wackadow up front, had bought the master tapes, and it was financially advantageous to actually drop the band, allow us to keep the money, and just get on with our lives. The reason being is because there were clauses in the contract for tour support, video support, promotional support, and it would have cost them a lot of money just to release the record at a time when the industry was tanking. So that was that. I'm very proud of what we achieved with Serial Joe, and I remember some of the best advice I ever gave. They released another album called Last Chance of the Romance Dance, and it didn't fare as well. And I remember saying to the guys, go back to school. They were still only 17. Finish off your schooling. And you've had no damage, because this industry will really damage you if you stay in a long time. And that was the best advice I did. And, if they wanted to be serious musicians, after your schooling, relaunch your career. I tell you what, though, it would be a great time for Serial Joe to have a reunion, because all the fans, the young girls especially, that grew up with Serial Joe, they would come out and see him.
I think you're absolutely right. Now, I once controversially, with my tongue in my cheek, I once referred to Serial Joe as a boy band. And I didn't mean that they're an orchestrated, because they were organically, and they played their own music. And I legit love that song. But just that they were, I was saying it because they were so young, like they were boys. But
well, it's interesting you say that, because of the first marketing meeting I went to in Columbia, in New York. There's about 20 people from the department sitting around, and I'm explaining to everyone who the band was and what we'd achieved. And one of the women in the marketing department says, another boy band. I'm not going to work another boy band, and walked out of the meeting.
Yeah, I think the better compare would be not so much like a Backstreet Boys or NSYNC, but the far better compare, I think, is Silverchair.
Yes, they actually played with Silverchair on the Edge Fest tour. Yeah, very much, and to some degree, almost parallel careers.
Right. And I was at that Edge Fest at Molson Park in Barrie. But another outdoor festival I did not attend that, honestly, I hope you're doing all right there, Kim. I feel like in an alternate universe, I do 2 hours just on this. But what can you share with us? Because, of course, it's been in the news lately because of the documentary we've all seen. But what can you share with us about attending Woodstock 99?
It was hell. It was really hell. So at Serial Joe, we got a tour bus. It breaks down a mile from the gate. We have to push it in through security. Then Woodstock itself begins to unfold in a riotous behavior, and it got out of hand. It was a horrible, horrible event, and the promoters really have to answer for that, but so do the fans who were intent on causing damage. And the catchphrase was that it was known as dead stock.
Right.
Because all the guys wanted to do was scream at girls, show us your tits. And then, of course, they set it on fire. And we managed to get out of there in time.
Well, you can blame the Red Hot Chili Peppers for they had to break out their cover of Jimi Hendrix's Fire, right? I don't know.
Well, plus also Limp Bizkit, you know. Yeah, it was a disaster, and they were gouging the fans, and it was incredibly hot, and it was awful.
Right. And but in retrospect, I mean, I've seen Limp Bizkit in concert. I'm not ashamed to say. Was 2000, I think, around this era, of course, but that's sort of their MO. Like, this is what they do. I remember being at the Dome to see them, and they basically ordered everybody in the upper levels to come down to the floors, like, security be damned. Like, the song is literally called Break Stuff, and they urged their fans to go crazy, go nuts. So in retrospect, this was a recipe for disaster.
Yes, it was, and you look at the recent Travis Scott debacle, and how quickly things can get out of hand. But that's the one thing that people don't realize about what they're doing. There's 50,000 people out there who are reacting to what you're saying or singing. And sometimes end up being very ugly. But at the same time, that's what rock and roll is as well. So,
No doubt. It's funny. Earlier you mentioned in the Rock Flash I played, you were talking about Cheap Trick. And as I'm listening to you talk about Cheap Trick, I'm thinking, I saw them open for Pearl Jam at Molson Park in Barrie once. And I was with my first wife there. And I distinctly remember, this is a Pearl Jam crowd, so it's not quite your aggro, new metal crowd. Although there were a lot of frat boys in the crowd, but that's another story for another time. But I distinctly remember I took her, like I had to use all of my muscle, as little as I have, and bring her to the back because I realized there was a wave going towards the stage, and it really felt dangerous. And this was just, I don't know, Molson Park in Barrie, I don't know what that is, 40,000 people or something in a field. But when you have that number of people in one spot, and it's not assigned seating, as they say, that is a very real risk.
Very much so. As a wayward teenager, I was a football fan, and I was used to the violence and the idea that someone was coming to get you, and you become very aware of the vibe. You can tell instantly when things are going to get out of control.
Right. The fight or flight kicks in too, so it's just a recipe there. But Woodstock 99, that's terrible news to hear about the bus breaking down, and you had to push that thing for a mile to get in, and then it sounds like it was pardon my French, it was a shit show. But it was kind of neat, though, that I don't know how you got Serial Joe on that lineup. Do you have any insight into like how that happened? Because was that the record label, or how the heck did Serial Joe end up being on the lineup?
It's because of Donald K. Donald out of Montreal. And his connections, he was connected to the individual that was booking the talent for the emerging artist stage. And so that was it. We wouldn't have got it without Donald.
Because there were only so many Canadian acts on the bill, although the Tragically Hip were there, as I recall. So quite the event. Okay, Kim, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but may I ask, did you leave Chum to manage Serial Joe? Like, is that one had to go for you to focus on the other, or how did you leave Chum?
My contract was coming to an end, and it just coincided with that. And it was just the way it worked out. It wasn't a deliberate move on either part. I couldn't vote with Serial Joe because I couldn't believe no one heard the fact that was a hit song, and my job is to promote hit songs. And the other side of it, I had been with Much Music Chum for 15 years, and time for a new adventure.
Time to do some other things. And then in 2005, you do return to, you were hosting The Word This Week on Book Television and A Channel. And then I got to ask you about this because I'm trying to remember it, but you appeared on Edge 102. Did you work there for a little bit?
Scott Turner was doing the Spirit of Radio shows on Sunday afternoon, asked me if I'd come in and fill in for him. So yeah, I did that for a while.
You know, I gotta just shout him out because I know he's listening. I love Scott Turner. I will have him over as often as he'll visit, and we just do these deepest dives into, like, be it Energy 108 or CFNY or even Flow. He's just an unsung hero in this marketplace.
Yeah, man. Again, for me, it was a text to CFNY as to how important they were in the development of the alternative scene.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Funny, I just had the Spoons on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed that as well. You mentioned you wrote some books. I want to just shout out The Republic of Rock and Roll, The Roaring 80s, From Curtis to Cobain. And I bet you listeners of this program would love to dive into that. So that's awesome. I gotta read that as well, because that's From Curtis to Cobain. You had me at hello. But you also received a Canadian Screen Award nomination for Best Writing in a Lifestyle or Reality Show for your work on the Juno Awards of 2017. So it sounds like you've been keeping yourself busy.
Well, for about a dozen or so years, I contribute work to the Junos, the scripts, and I produce the Hall of Fame Awards. You know, when you see those tribute tapes honoring Randy Bachman or whoever. Yeah, I wrote and produced those, and I did the same for the Walk of Fame. An interesting one on the Walk of Fame, the Alan Slade Rising Star Award back in 2014, I think, went to The Weeknd, and at the time I'd never heard of The Weeknd, and he hadn't done any interviews, and they allowed us to interview him, and it ended up being one of the best pieces of work I ever produced. And of course, I grew to love The Weeknd's music.
You know, he still doesn't like to do Canadian media. I don't know if you've noticed this, but he seems to be very selective in what he'll do, and it typically ends up being American and not Canadian. But that was quite the coup for you.
Yeah, it was his first major interview, and if anyone's listening, they can search it out. It's on YouTube. And The Weeknd, Walk of Fame, Canada Walk of Fame. And yeah, real good.
Now, Kim, again, we talked off the top about your recent health struggles. And as we wind down here, you know, you talk about one of your highlights being that interview with The Weeknd. Without a doubt, one of the highlights for me, and this is 970 something episodes and almost 10 years in, was this last hour I spent with you. Honestly, Kim, amazing.
Come on.
Oh, you can review the tapes. I don't say this to every guest, but this was awesome. And I'm wondering, like, how are you keeping yourself busy these days? What have you been up to recently?
Well, new project is my health. That's all I care about right now. I've moved to Fort Erie. It's right by the water. The water is just 50 feet away. Buffalo is on the other side. I walk. I'm lucky enough to be able to ride occasionally. And I cook. Believe it or not, I do jigsaws. And in these COVID times, of course, I try and reduce the amount of interaction with people. Race. That's what it's come down to. And if I can get another 10 years out of this, then I would have considered it a success.
Kim, if there's anything I can ever do for you, my friend, you know how to reach me, and I'm hoping at some point we can do something again. Imagine kicking out the jams of Kim Clarke Champniss. Like, I'm just hoping you'll take my calls. But again, thanks so much. And you said something. I feel like I should get the tattoo, or maybe you should get the tattoo even. So keep on keeping on, my friend.
That's been my motive. It's so important for all of you out there. No matter what it is that you're going through, you gotta keep on keeping on.
All right, Kim, I stopped the recording. That was amazing for me. Thank you.
Hey, Can I, if you're gonna play a song of mine, there's a song on YouTube called Naked in the Deep Insomnia. It's one of the proudest things I've done.
Okay.
Naked.
Naked. Hold on here. Naked in the Deep.
Bracket. Insomnia.
And if it's on YouTube, I'll track it down. And you can.
It's on the YouTube. And that single, apparently it's selling for $20. I can't believe it. It's under Speak.
Okay, I will definitely play that. Now of course, I stopped recording too early, but that's okay. I do have the Zoom back up here because I recorded the Zoom just in case. All right, we're all good. But my friend, I do need to take a screen cap of us together. This is how I do it in the Zoom era. Not as so I will count you down, and then I'll take a screen cap here of us. So this gives you a warning. You can strike a pose or as you wish. But okay, 3, 2. Love it. That's great. That's great. Hey, my friend, this was great again, man. We have a lot of mutual friends and acquaintances, and I've actually wanted to do this for a while. I don't know what. I saw your blog. I follow your blog, and I adore it. Yeah, I mean, I'm a blogger from way back, so I still subscribe to RSS feeds for blogs I like. So I get a real-time little thing in my reader, and it said, and every time you write, it's awesome. And I was, as you know, I was reading what you wrote about the voice not being there when you had the flat tire. And it was so well, like I put myself in your shoes, and it was so well written. And then I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? He can say no or he can't do it, but let me see if he'll do this. And you did. And again, I'll let you get back to your day, but this was a thrill, and I'm here if you need anything, my friend.
Thanks, Mike. This is the first time I've done anything public since the operation, so there you go.
Well, thank you for doing this with me. I'll share it with all your fans and everybody. Thank you again. Take care, my friend.